Hi, and welcome to another Pirate News. It is a hot one tonight. Oh my God, stay hydrated. Please, for the love of God, and all that is holy. Um, we have a couple things we wanted to really bring to your attention tonight. With me is the magnificent Jamie, our fearless leader.
Ahoy.
Uh, Steve, always the nimble-minded one,
Hi.
and the one and only Malt.
Fresh and crispy skillet fried pork chops.
And
Never a dull moment with Malt.
never dull.
What Malt is trying to say is it's warm in Worcester.
Yes, it is very hot in Massachusetts today. Oh my stars! So hopefully you all are staying hydrated and are well. Um, that being said, I'm going to jump right into it. There's a couple major things that happen in the computer world, and going right into the CFAA, otherwise known as the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And this was something that was enacted originally in 1986. But I would like to defer to Jamie if you can enlighten us more of what exactly it is. Explain to me in a way that even I could understand.
So it's an abomination. I mean, it was put out when the movie Hackers and other stuff of that ilk, where people were really concerned about this thing where, oh, people are going to break into other computers. Oh no. And, it's just governments that do that, dudes, and crime syndicates. So it's overly broad. And, the most telling example was when Aaron Swartz went and through his access at MIT, downloaded about 4 million documents, 4 million research papers, and
Academic
things like
papers,
that.
yeah.
Academic papers, right? Over from JSTOR, which is a repository of such papers, and that you have to pay money for, even though the people who write the papers don't get paid anything. And so the FBI and the Department of Justice went after him using the CFAA law in order to prosecute him. And in their standard thing, it was like, we're going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at you so that you will settle. And so that hopefully he would settle for a lesser charge, but they'd get the conviction and they wouldn't have to go to trial. But unfortunately, for all of us and for him and his family, he basically did the good fight and tried to fight it, but ultimately was basically bled dry financially by the FBI and the Department of Justice. And because of his depression, unfortunately decided to take his own life back in 2013, which is everybody's loss. Mm-hmm. And so the Supreme Court, in the case of a cop who was certainly misusing his access, the Supreme Court has reined back the CFAA and decided that if you have access that is sufficient, or just because you have access is insufficient to charge someone under the CFAA, even if you got stuff, you're probably, if you're using it in the way it was intended, and someone's welcome to correct me if I got that wrong. So that's a welcome choice on their part. It is telling that it's a police officer in this case.
Can I jump in on that?
Yeah, please jump in.
So it is extremely important to mention the specifics in this case because it's fairly outrageous. Like I was excited about this change until I read the background. So you've got this corrupt police officer, Van Buren, who basically asks his buddy for money. And this dude is so upset by the way the request is phrased that he goes to the FBI and they set up a sting operation. So The cop was promised $5,000 if he looked up this license plate number allegedly belonging to a woman the friend met at a strip club. Specifically, he wanted to know if this woman was an undercover police officer, which is, totally something you want to know about women you meet at strip clubs if you have like upstanding goals with them. Anyhow, yeah, $5,000 to look up this information, and he did it. And the thing that makes me the most upset is that this is basically a carbon copy of an earlier case, United States versus Rodriguez, from 2010. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that a Social Security Administration employee violated the CFAA when he used the Social Security database to look up information about people he knew personally. Like, why is this different? Like, if anything, Rodriguez is less egregious because he was doing it personally. He was like being paid. So like, now what we basically got is that it's now legal for ISIS to bribe cops to look up information on people.
Well, no, I don't think it's legal, but you can't go after them with the CFAA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you can go after them with other things.
Yeah, traditionally the wild card in the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and if you want to call it that, is that the offenses are predicated upon quote unquote unauthorized access. And there's not really much of the hemming and hawing about the CFAA has really boiled down to what unauthorized access means. And in the case of like Aaron Swartz, he was MIT. On MIT's network, you have access to all of JSTOR's JSTOR's documents. All of JSTOR. He was downloading them from MIT's network, but they raised a claim of unauthorized access. I mean, by the strict definition, I have probably violated the CFAA. Somebody was sending my former place of work a lot of spam, and just I traced looked at the email headers and just typed their static, their Comcast IP, domain, or their Comcast domain name into a web browser, and I got a login page for a router. So I put in the default credentials and turned off their SMTP access. But that's probably that would, I think, count as a CFAA violation. But what the Supreme Court did here, I mean, they basically said, so this officer has access to license plate information in his ordinary case of work. So the fact that he accessed them for some other reason was okay. And I'll just close by saying I went to a HOPE conference a couple of years, HOPE Hackers on Planet Earth. And an attorney gave a talk about the CFAA. And he basically closed with a summary that went something like this. The way the CFAA has been interpreted by the courts, if you want to get back at somebody with a computer, walk up and hit them over the head with one, because that's just simple assault. The CFAA will land you in jail for a long time.
Yeah, some of these things are like, if somebody were to walk up to you with national security information, just give it to you, you're gone for at least 10 years. Like, goodbye. Like, hey, here's some Edward Snowden files. We can come in and lock you up for 10 to 20 years. Just boom, gone.
The history of the case is fascinating, especially if you look at some of the situations where it was ruled that it did not apply. There was a cyberbullying case from 2009 where a teen girl committed suicide after being harassed over MySpace, and it was decided that it's not fraud to violate a website's terms of service, because that would make it overly broad. Like, that would make the ruling too exploitable just by violating a website's terms of service.
Well, but that's important, right?
I mean, I feel like when you get to a point that someone commits suicide,
Yeah, but I mean, it is too broad. You shouldn't go to jail just because you didn't like. Facebook goes or different sites go and they have terms of service, and literally it's everybody just checks it off. Everybody just clicks, right? And so you can't go back to them and say, hey, let's negotiate this. I want this thing and I don't want that. You have no power. It's either use it or not. And when you get someone like Google or Facebook who have such an amount of market power that you're in essence forced to use them, to then say they can flip around and say, oh, you misused this, now we're going to have the feds come down on you like a ton of bricks. That's too much.
Well, I'd like to follow up with 2 points. One is regarding the MySpace case. I assume that it is a violation of law to bully someone into committing suicide in person. So, you know, if that is correct, then using a computer to do it, you know, you should be liable under the same laws as if you did it in person. My feelings. Second, the other catch with like terms of service violations being considered CFAA violations, you know, if that were allowed, then it effectively would allow any company that wrote a terms of service to effectively be writing law. And as Jamie indicated, one does not have a lot of leeway to negotiate terms of service. You either accept them or you do not.
All right, that's a good point. There was also a case in 2011, United States versus Kane, where someone was accused of fraud after discovering an exploitable software glitch in a gambling machine. And this was also ruled as it did not constitute hacking because the poker machine was not a protected computer.
That's it. That I find fascinating because protected computers are usually anything that's involved in commerce. And, you know, because money comes out of gambling machines, I would have just assumed that would be commerce. But, you know, what do I know?
It did not demonstrate a tangential relationship to interstate commerce. But the Kane is still facing a wire fraud charge. So sorry, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything with federal prosecutors. They'll throw a whole bunch of things at you. And thankfully, looking at this case, at least some of them are valid. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't recall if this was a news outlet's opinion or part of the Supreme Court's opinion, but the notion that, you know, maybe Congress ought to go back and revisit the CFAA and try to update it. I think that suggestion is not without merit.
It was amended in 2011 to include a larger swath of cell phones and smartphones. As apparently prior to that, they were not covered. So that's interesting.
So that being said, there is another thing that is up. They call it the For the People Act, and otherwise known as HR1, coming up. So could one of you gentlemen tell us a little bit about HR1 and what that is?
So HR1 is a bill put forward by the Democrats to update the election laws so they are more uniform across the country. So, for example, if I recall correctly, it bans the use of, it bans requiring people to present an ID when they go to vote. Or it makes, if I recall correctly, it makes mail-in voting applicable for all states, that you have to do it. So it has a number of very useful changes. However, I know the Greens have opposed at least some part of it, simply because while it expands the number of federal offices that are allowed to get public funding, it also raises the bars. It raises the bar in order to qualify for funding. And and that's one of that I believe is one of their major concerns. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. The Republicans have been opposed to it. It has passed in the House, but of course needs 60 votes in the Senate, and at least two of the Democrats, Manchin and Sinema, have basically said that they don't want to get rid of the filibuster, the 60 vote requirement. And so we'll see if, as a result, all of the Republican laws to make it harder to vote that Republican legislatures are passing will end up depressing turnout for the Democrats and other parties.
The Secretary of State of Texas just admitted at a big event that if he had failed to block mail-in voting, Trump would have lost Texas. That's the scale of how important this like wide voting access is. Trump would have lost Texas.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm trying to scratch through the cobwebs in my head, but wasn't the filibuster just sort of, didn't the process originate as sort of a way to show some deference to senators who like maybe needed a little more time to study a law or something along those lines?
My understanding is that what was covered under the filibuster when it originally came in was small, and over time it has expanded. I don't think it was the filibuster was there at the founding of the republic.
Yeah, I mean, I could see. Yeah, I object to the way it's used now, where one person will just say, "Well, I'm going to block this, and we're just not going to talk about it." I would rather, filibustering, meaning you get up and you read the telephone book, or at least it should at least require effort, in my opinion.
Yep. Like if Bernie can do it, those slack jaws should be able to do it as well.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, the Senate is the minority has a disproportionate amount of power, and to require that there be 60 votes in order to pass in order to pass legislation requires that an even smaller minority can exert their will over the majority, and ultimately is undemocratic. I mean, I would just say get rid of the Senate, but that's a constitutional change, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. But this is something that is simply the laws of the rules of the Senate, and there's no reason it has to be there, but there's a bunch of Democrats who, I don't know, more concerned about re-election or getting a cushy cincture once they leave than their actual party. But I mean, I know if they were pirates, we'd be making sure that they get primaried out.
Well, I mean, I understand that some people have a certain reverence for, historical precedent and stability, and all that stuff is nice. But at some point, I mean, I think, there's cause to start judging things on how well stuff works. The filibuster, in my opinion, does not work. It basically provides the Senate with a very small minority in the Senate a way to prevent things from being done. And I mean, it could go on either side. It could, regardless of who's in power.
It's like if your toddler was having a meltdown in their car and they had access to the emergency brake, that's basically what it is. That the entire legislative process is now being held by is being held up by the least reasonable, most hysterical, reactionaries.
Yeah, I mean, I think it works, and maybe I'm being too idealistic here, but I get that people can have honest to goodness disagreements over policy, but you can agree to disagree and just either put something to a vote and have it pass, or put it to a vote and have it fail, or try to work out some ground in the middle. Just doing nothing for too often is it's not a good thing. You look dysfunctional, Claude.
And too often it really is. Too often
Like-
it really is.
8 years of Obama and nothing happened because of the Republican obstructionism. And that's just going to be the way going forward. Like, now that they've demonstrated that this method works, it's going to be the only one they use to set up their 20-year plan for like one party rule.
I mean, we saw with the Trump election where the candidate who got the second largest number of votes was the winner. And where in the 2020 election, where even if Biden won by 7 million votes, nevertheless the GOP is going to claim that, or at least the majority of the GOP is going to claim that the election was stolen. That really the GOP is the only legitimate choice is for them to be in power, and a system that enshrines their minority support and gives it a majority either through gerrymandering or through voter access laws or just through money, is not one that is what the people want.
I'm going to be a little harsher. So
Please.
So as a town meeting member, one of the articles that we debated in Arlington was whether to appropriate money to hire a consultant and do a study involving whether to convert the clerk's office from an elected position to an appointed position. And some of the objections to it were, well, democracy is more important. And, things, democracy is one of those things that could work well or it could not work well. And I think that at least on a federal level, we're providing outstanding, perhaps, case studies of how democracy can really not work all that well. And yeah, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. For me, I understand there is a difference between process and results, and you have to give some consideration to both. But, if I had to choose between the two, I would probably err on the side of results. And we just, for a large number of people in the country, it's just not working out that way right now.
Yup.
I was wondering if Malt was pointing or petting Tim, and I see you're petting Tim.
Yeah, but I think from the pirate perspective, more democracy is the solution. I mean, we basically have an elected oligarchy. And, elections are good, but, people power is more important. And so pushing out more decisions to the actual voters, where I take personally a broad viewpoint. We have this no taxation without representation that we tell ourselves, and yet we have people who are living here, who are residents, who pay taxes, who can't vote. So we should really start acting, putting our money where our mouth is there instead of, harking back to some bygone days of the Revolutionary War or something.
To quote somebody famous, I mean, the American Revolution was to a certain extent about, white land owning men who, many of which happened to own slaves. And, I don't know how I think there are an increasing number of people who, just don't identify with that image anymore. Not that that's a bad thing. There's, what Jamie was saying, it kind of makes me think that maybe we need kind of like we need an anti-oppression platform in politics.
That's a good idea. I mean, to get back to a point about HR1, I've heard the objections from the Green Party to it, in that one of the things it does is, while it expands the amount of money available, or expands instead of just having public financing of candidates for president, it would also expand that to, I believe, House and Senate, which is useful. But the problem is it then increases the thresholds that you need to cross in order to qualify, which, no doubt will have the effect of helping Democrats to be able to get public financing, and will prevent pirates and Greens and socialists from qualifying. That said, we as a party believe in democracy. So things that are going to encourage people to vote and to participate are more important than our individual, how we benefit or not. Ultimately, it's the voters that are in charge, and we need to make sure that our government shows that.
And I think that really speaks to who we are as a party, because we're more concerned with who we have the voice for than who we're trying to be. We're not just trying to be someone who's in office. That's not the end goal for us. The end goal for us has always been making sure the policies are right. And I think that really is the difference between those who run for office for power and those who run for office to make changes. And I think that's the real difference between who the Pirate Party is versus a lot of the other parties, per se.
Certainly hope so.
I mean, honestly, I don't want to be adding any more to my plate. I really don't. And I know a lot of us here feel the same, but we do this out of a sense of necessity. So
I've got an update on the Jan 6 situation, if y'all would like to hear that.
Please.
Yeah, please do.
So 2 days ago, the U.S. Capitol Police Sergeant Aquilino Ganell spoke to Congress. Some things he said that I found quite interesting. There was no Antifa there. The sea of people there were saying President Trump sent us here. He also had a message for members of Congress who did not vote to support the creation of the independent Jan 6 Commission. I feel insulted. They don't have the courage. They demand something of us that they're not willing to do. Sacrifice. I really just we really have to hammer home to the police community that the right does not support them. The right wants to use them to usher in an age of fascism. And if you oppose fascism, officer, they will make you a target. Like, you're not safe if you are neutral in this issue. So I really encourage all of the police watching this to review the video from January 6th, and realize we are 5 steps closer to the fire than anyone is really comfortable admitting. So that's fun.
And on that note, please definitely give us the likes, the thumbs ups, send the subs, notification bell, and definitely follow us on our blog and on our wiki as well. We have a mailing list that gets sent to regularly, and we are doing plenty of stuff on the national level now, and we're even looking to connect with some people on the international level. So we're doing it, and we're doing it for you. So hopefully we're doing right, and if you want to give us any suggestions, thoughts, comments, we always love that too.
And be sure to check us out at masspirates.org. Like, subscribe, and click that bell.
And I know I often say don't help the cops, but if you have free time, browse through the FBI's list of folks from January 6th and see if you recognize anybody. Because like, this is basically our last chance to stop this.
And while you're there, get your FBI pin, because that's going to help too.
FBI pin?
Yeah, the little, like, the plastic FBI Junior Investigator Secret Club.
I thought that was your